The galaxy was full of life, but sometimes even the brightest stars burned out too soon. Far away on a world of silver skies and tall crystal towers, there lived a princess who was slowly fading. Her name was known across the stars, not because of her power or beauty, but because of her suffering. Her people whispered that she was beyond saving. The alien princess had once been strong, a light of hope for her kingdom. Her laughter had filled the palace halls, and her voice had guided her people through times of trouble. But now her body betrayed her. Her blood carried a sickness that no healer could cure. Day by day her strength left her, until she could barely stand. Doctors came from every corner of the galaxy. Some were the greatest minds her world had ever known. They tried machines, medicines, and alien technology that glowed with strange colors, but nothing worked. The sickness laughed at every attempt, and the princess's life slipped away like water through fingers. Her people began to lose hope. They loved her, but love could not fight death. Priests prepared funeral songs. Courtiers spoke in low voices about who would rule after her. Even her family looked at her with broken hearts. They wanted to believe she could live, but their eyes told another story. She was dying, and everyone knew it. The palace itself seemed to mourn. The lights dimmed in the halls. The gardens, once full of bright flowers, now looked dull and gray. The servants walked silently, afraid to smile, afraid to laugh. It was as if the whole kingdom was already preparing to say goodbye. The princess lay in her chamber. The bed was soft, made of silk and shining cloth, but it felt like a prison. Her body weak, her breath shallow. She looked at the ceiling and wondered if she would ever see another sunrise. Every morning felt like it could be her last. She remembered the days of her childhood, running through the royal gardens, chasing glowing insects with her friends. She remembered her promises to her people. "I will be a queen who protects you all," she had once said with pride. Now those words cut her like knives. How could she protect anyone when she could not even save herself? Her people still visited her. They stood outside her chamber and prayed. They left gifts, flowers, and letters begging her to stay alive. But when she closed her eyes, all she heard was silence. The silence of a future without her. Her father, the king, sat beside her often. He tried to smile, tried to tell her stories of strength, but his eyes were red, his voice heavy with sorrow. The queen, her mother, wept quietly at night. They wanted to save her, but even with all the power of their throne, they could not fight death. The alien council met again and again. They argued, they searched, they pleaded with other worlds for help. Some worlds offered prayers, others offered science, but every answer ended the same way. There is nothing more we can do. The princess listened to their words and felt the weight of despair. She wanted to scream, to fight, to demand life. But her body was too weak. Her heart beat softly, each thump like the ticking of a clock running out of time. News of her sickness spread beyond her planet. Across the galaxy, travelers whispered in spaceports, "Have you heard? The alien princess is dying. She will not last the season. She was beyond saving." Some pitied her, others shook their heads. To them, she was already a story ending in tragedy, yet in all the sorrow, there was one spark that no one expected. Far away on a blue planet called Earth, a human heard her story. He was no doctor, no warrior, not a prince or king. He was ordinary, a man who lived a quiet life. But when he heard the tale of the dying princess, something inside him refused to stay silent. He could not explain why. Perhaps it was pity, perhaps it was hope, or maybe it was something deeper. All he knew was this: he would not let her die without a fight. Where others had given up, he would step forward. And though the galaxy believed she was beyond saving, he whispered to himself, "I will save her." The alien princess did not yet know his name. She did not yet know that her fate was about to change. But the story of her death was not the end. It was only the beginning. For in the darkness of her fading life, a human light was about to appear, and the galaxy would never forget what happened next. Across the galaxy, her story traveled like a shadow. Every planet, every colony, every port repeated the same words. The alien princess is dying. To most, It was only a tale of sadness, another tragedy in a universe full of them. But to one, human, it became something more. His name was Daniel. He was not rich, not powerful, not anyone important. He lived on Earth, in a small city where the stars looked like tiny silver drops at night. He worked simple jobs, fixed machines, and lived a quiet life. To the galaxy, he was invisible. But when Daniel heard of the princess, he could not turn away. He first heard the story in a bar filled with travelers, merchants, and pilots spoke about the alien princess as if she was already gone. "She won't last the month," one man said. "Her own people gave up," another added. Daniel sat quietly, listening. Every word cut him deeper than it should have. Why did he care about someone he had never met? He didn't know, but the thought of her suffering felt unbearable. That night he could not sleep. He lay in his bed staring at the ceiling. The words "beyond saving" echoed in his head. He thought about her lying alone, fading while the universe only watched. Something inside him screamed, "Do something," but he was only human. What could he do against a sickness that defeated alien science? Yet Daniel was stubborn. He searched the data networks, reading everything about her illness. He learned her organs were failing. Her blood could no longer clean itself. Her people tried every treatment but failed. And in the middle of all that, hopelessness. He noticed one strange thing. The record said her body had rejected all artificial organs, but it had never tried a natural transplant from another species. Daniel's heart raced. Could it be possible? Could a human organ keep her alive? It sounded impossible, even insane. But sometimes hope was born from the impossible, and Daniel had nothing to lose but his own life. He went to the Galactic embassy the next day. The building was tall, covered in glowing symbols, guards in silver. Armor stopped him at the gate. "What business do you have here?" they asked. "I want to help the princess," Daniel said. The guards laughed. "You? You're just human. Go home." But Daniel did not move. He repeated the same words, again and again, until they let him inside. Inside the embassy, he met officials from the alien council. They looked at him with cold eyes. "You must be joking," one said. "No human organ can save her," said another. "You will only waste time." But Daniel stood tall. "Maybe I can't save her," he admitted, "but has anyone even tried?" His voice echoed in the chamber. The council fell silent. They had no answer. For all their wisdom, for all their power, not one of them had ever thought of a human sacrifice. To them, humans were small, weak, unimportant. But now, this unimportant man stood before them with fire in his eyes. Finally, one council member spoke. "Even if your organ worked, the surgery is dangerous. You could die." Daniel nodded. "If she dies, she loses everything," he replied. "If I die, I only lose one life." The word struck them like lightning, simple but impossible to argue. News spread quickly. A human had stepped forward, offering his own kidney to save the princess. Some laughed at him, some called him insane, but whispers began to grow. What if he succeeds? What if a human can do what no alien could? The king of the alien world was furious when he first heard the news. "How dare a stranger risk such madness?" he shouted. But the queen wept softly. "If there is even a chance, can we refuse it?" she asked. The king fell silent, torn between pride and desperation. He loved his daughter, but could he trust a human with her life? Meanwhile, Daniel prepared himself. He signed documents, knowing he might not survive. Doctors warned him of pain, of risk, of death. But he did not flinch. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face in his mind, pale and fading. And every time he whispered, "Not if I can stop it." When the day of the decision arrived, the alien council gathered in the great hall. The princess lay weak in her chamber, unaware of the storm outside. The king stood before the people and declared, "A human offers his life to save my daughter." Gasps filled the air. Some shouted it was foolish. Others cried that it was a miracle. And in the middle of the chaos, Daniel stepped forward. He did not wear armor. He did not carry weapons. He was only human, but in his eyes burned a light stronger than any soldier's. "I am not here for glory," he said. "I am not here for power. I am here because no one deserves to die alone when help is still possible." The hall grew silent. Even the king could not speak. For in that moment, everyone felt it. This human was not weak, not small. He was willing to give a part of himself for someone he had never known. And that more than anything made him greater than all the rest. The council finally gave their answer. "The surgery will be done." The words shook the galaxy. For the first time, hope returned. Not because of science, not because of power, but because one human dared to step forward when everyone else had stepped back. The princess still did not know. She still lay in her bed, fading. But her story had changed. She was no longer beyond saving. For a human had given her one last chance, and the universe waited to see what would happen next. The day of the surgery arrived like a storm that no one could escape. The palace was silent, but the silence was heavy, filled with fear and whispers. The alien princess lay in her chamber, unaware of the risk that was about to begin. Her skin pale, her breath shallow. She looked more like a shadow than a living being. Doctors walked around her bed, whispering to each other in low voices. They had no faith in this plan. To them, this was madness. Daniel stood outside the chamber, dressed in white medical robes. He felt the weight of 1,000 eyes on him. Soldiers, nobles, council members, all staring at the human who dared to do the impossible. He was nervous, yes. His hands shook, his heart pounded. But fear did not stop him. Instead, it reminded him that what he was about to do truly mattered. The chief surgeon, an alien with silver eyes and long hands, stepped forward. "You understand," he said coldly. "You may die during this procedure." Daniel nodded. "I understand," he replied, his voice steady. "You understand there is no guarantee this will even work," the surgeon continued. "I understand," Daniel repeated. "And still, you are willing?" "Yes," Daniel said, "because someone has to try." The surgeon stared at him for a long moment, then finally gave the order. "Prepare the human." The operating room was like something from a dream. Walls glowed with blue light. Machines hummed softly. Alien instruments floated in the air, moving as if alive. Daniel lay down on the cold table, wires and tubes attached to his body. The last thing he saw before the anesthesia took him was the princess, lying on another table beside him, her face peaceful, her chest rising weakly with each fragile breath. Stay alive, he thought, before darkness took him. The surgery began. The room filled with the sound of machines, beeps, and alarms. Alien doctors worked quickly, their many hands moving with skill. They removed one of Daniel's kidneys with precision. The organ glowed faintly under the sterile lights. So small, so simple, yet carrying the hope of an entire kingdom. Next came the hardest part, connecting the human kidney to the alien princess's body. Her blood was different, her cells hostile. Every time the kidney touched her system, her body fought back. Alarms rang, red lights flashed. "She is rejecting it," one doctor shouted. Another shook his head. "It cannot be done." The council members watching through the glass began to argue. "Stop this madness before both of them die." One cried, "This is a waste of time." Another added, but the queen pressed her hand to the glass, tears in her eyes. "Please, don't stop," she whispered. The surgeon ignored the shouting and kept working. His silver eyes narrowed with focus. "We adjust the flow, slow it down," he ordered. Machines shifted, pumps adjusted. The human kidney continued to fight for acceptance. Minute by minute, it pushed back against her body's rejection. Daniel, still unconscious, twitched slightly. Even in his sleep, his body seemed to resist, to fight alongside hers. It was as if his spirit refused to give up. The monitors beeped faster, the princess's pulse rising. "She's stabilizing," a doctor gasped. Another shook his head. "It won't last." Hours passed. Sweat dripped down the surgeon's face. Every second was a war between life and death, between failure and hope. At one point, her heartbeat flatlined. The machine screamed in alarm. The council outside shouted, "It is over!" But the surgeon slammed his hand on the table. Restart her heart. Do not give up. Electric waves surged through her chest. Her body jerked, then went still. For a terrible moment, the room froze. Then, beep, beep, beep. Her heart returned, faint but alive. The entire room exhaled in relief. But the danger was not over. For another 3 hours they fought, balancing the alien blood with the human organ. At last, the monitors showed a steady rhythm. The princess's skin warmed, color slowly returning to her cheeks. The human kidney had been accepted. The surgeon stepped back, exhausted, his many hands trembling. It is done, he whispered. The nurses froze, unable to believe it. The queen collapsed in tears. The king turned away, hiding his face, and the council members who had doubted now stood silent, their pride broken. Daniel lay unconscious, pale and weak but alive. The princess too breathed steadily. Her chest rose and fell with strength unseen in weeks. She was not cured, not yet, but she was no longer dying. For the first time, there was hope outside the palace. The news spread like fire. The people cheered, their songs rising into the night. The princess lives. A human saved her, they cried. For them, it was more than survival. It was a miracle. And though the princess still slept, her life hung by a thread of human sacrifice. That thread would grow stronger. It would tie her to Daniel forever. Not just through blood, but through something deeper, something that would soon change both of their worlds. The palace was quiet after the impossible surgery, but it was not the silence of despair anymore. It was the silence of waiting, of holding breath. Every corridor, every hall, every tower waited for one sound. Her voice. The princess lay in her chamber, still and pale. Machines surrounded her, glowing softly. Tubes and wires carried life through her fragile body. The human kidney inside her was working, but her mind remained locked in sleep. Her people prayed she would open her eyes. For days she slept, caught between life and death. Daniel also lay in recovery. He was weak, pale, and in pain. Every breath reminded him of the organ he had lost. But when he asked about her, he only wanted to know one thing. Is she alive? The doctors told him yes, and he smiled despite the pain. To him that was enough. He did not care about glory. He only cared that she lived. On the 5th day, something changed. The princess's fingers twitched. A faint movement, almost too small to notice, the nurse gasped, calling the royal family. The queen rushed into the chamber, her heart pounding. She leaned close, holding her daughter's hand. My child, can you hear me? The princess stirred, her lips parting as if to speak. Her eyelids trembled, then slowly opened. The light hurt her eyes, but she forced them to focus. The ceiling above her was unfamiliar. She blinked, confused, then turned her head. The first thing she saw was her mother's tearful face. Mother? Her voice was weak, broken. But it was a voice alive. The queen sobbed, clutching her hand. You're alive, she whispered. You're truly alive. The king entered moments later, his proud face breaking into tears. He could no longer hide. His daughter was awake, and the weight of grief that had crushed him lifted. The princess tried to sit up, but her body trembled. She looked around, noticing the machines, the wires, the strange steady rhythm on the monitor. What happened? To me? She asked softly. The doctors exchanged glances, unsure how to explain. The queen hesitated, then spoke. You were dying, my child. But someone saved you. The princess's brow furrowed. Saved me, she whispered. Her heart beat faster. She remembered fading into darkness, the silence, the cold. And then, a strange warmth like a light pulling her back. Who? She asked, her voice shaking. Who saved me? The room fell silent. The king clenched his fists, pride fighting. With truth, finally, the queen spoke again, her voice gentle. A human, my daughter. He gave you a part of himself. The princess froze. Her eyes widened, trying to understand. A human? She repeated. Her people had always spoken of humans as small, weak creatures, but one of them had done what no one else could. She touched her chest, feeling the steady beat inside. It was stronger than before, warmer. Her heart raced, not with sickness, but with life. A stranger's sacrifice flowed in her veins now. She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks.
He gave me his life? The queen nodded. He risked everything for you. The princess's chest tightened. No prince, no knight, no warrior of her own people had done this. Yet a stranger, a human, had chosen her life over his own safety.
Why? She whispered. No one could answer. Even the doctors had no explanation. All they knew was that he had refused to let her die. Days passed as she slowly recovered. Her strength returned, little by little. She could sit up. She could walk with help. Every step felt like a miracle. And with every step she thought of the human who had given her this chance. At last she asked to see him. The king resisted. He is just a human, unworthy of a princess, he said. But the queen insisted. He is the reason our daughter breathes. Do not deny her this. Reluctantly, the king agreed. The meeting was arranged in a quiet chamber. Daniel sat in a chair, still weak from his own surgery. When the princess entered, the room grew still. She walked slowly, her steps uncertain, but her eyes were fixed on him. He looked nothing like the heroes from her people's stories. He had no shining armor, no glowing crown. He was just a man, tired and pale. But when she saw him, her heart stirred in a way she did not understand. For a long moment she said nothing. Daniel looked at her, his lips curving into a faint smile. "You're awake," he said softly. The words were simple, but they struck her deeply. She had expected questions, pride, demands, but instead, he looked at her as if her life itself was the only reward he wanted. She stepped closer, tears shining in her eyes. "You gave me your life," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "No, I only gave you a part. The rest is still mine," he said with a small laugh. Her lips trembled, torn between laughter and tears. "Why?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why would you do this for me?" Daniel's smile faded, replaced with quiet honesty. "Because no one else would," he answered. "Because no one deserves to die when help is possible." The princess's heart pounded. In that moment she felt something new, something powerful, not just gratitude but a bond forming deep inside. She had woken not only to life, but to the beginning of something far greater than she could imagine. The human had given her his kidney, but she could feel it. He had also given her his heart. The days after her awakening passed like gentle ripples on a quiet lake. The princess walked again, though slowly, her body still weak. But every step she took was proof that life had returned. And behind each step was the silent gift of a human heart. Daniel recovered too, though pain still followed him. Sometimes his body ached where the surgeons had worked. Sometimes his breath came heavy. Yet when he saw the princess walking in the palace gardens, every pain was worth it. At first their meetings were short. A simple greeting, a question about health, a quiet silence. The king allowed them only because the queen insisted. But even in those small moments, something strange began to grow. It was not forced, not demanded. It was natural, like a seed breaking through stone. The princess was curious about him. She had grown up with warriors, nobles, scholars who spoke of power and glory. But this human was different. He never boasted, never asked for rewards. He smiled simply when she laughed. He listened carefully when she spoke, and when silence fell between them, he did not rush to fill it. He was simply present, and that alone brought her peace. One afternoon they sat together in the royal gardens. The sky above glowed with twin suns, casting golden light on crystal trees. The princess held a flower in her hands, its petals glowing faintly. "Do humans have flowers like this?" she asked. Daniel chuckled. "Not glowing ones, no, but we have roses." "Roses?" she repeated, unfamiliar with the word. He described them simply. Red petals, green stems, thorns that could prick. She listened, eyes wide. as if he spoke of a wonder from another world, and in truth he was. Their worlds were different, their species even more so. Yet in those quiet talks, they were not alien and human. They were simply two souls sharing moments. The princess found herself smiling more, laughing softly. Her people whispered about her change. She walks in the gardens again, they said. She laughs once more. And always, when she laughed, the human was near. But not everyone celebrated. Some nobles grumbled. "This is dangerous," they muttered. "A princess must not lower herself for a human." The king himself struggled with it. He respected Daniel's sacrifice, but feared what closeness might bring. Yet the queen saw what others missed. She saw how her daughter's eyes brightened when Daniel entered the room. She saw life in her again, not just survival. The princess herself did not yet understand her feelings. She only knew that. When she looked at Daniel, her chest grew warm, not the painful heat of sickness, but the gentle warmth of life. She remembered his words. No one deserves to die when help is possible. Simple words, but they carried weight. In them she heard not just kindness, but strength. A strength no warrior's blade could match. One evening the princess asked him directly, "Do you regret it?" She whispered, "Giving me a part of yourself?" Daniel shook his head immediately. "Not once," he said softly. "If I had 10 lives, I would give you one every time." Her breath caught, her heart racing at his words. She turned away, hiding the blush on her pale cheeks. For the first time she felt something she had never felt before, a bond beyond gratitude. Days turned into weeks. The princess grew stronger, her steps firmer, her laughter louder. She and Daniel walked side by side through the palace halls. They shared stories of their worlds. He told her about rain on Earth. She told him about crystal storms in her skies. He described oceans that stretched beyond sight. She spoke of rivers that sang when the moons rose. And each time they shared, the walls between them fell a little more. The people noticed too. They whispered not only about her health but about her closeness to the human. Some voices were filled with hope. "Perhaps this bond will unite us with humans," they said. Others were bitter. "This is dangerous, unnatural," they warned. But no whisper could break what was forming between them. One night, as stars filled the skies above the palace, the princess stood on her balcony, looking at the endless dark. Daniel joined her, his gaze also fixed on the stars. "They say space is endless," he murmured. "Yet here we are, 2 lives crossing in it." She looked at him, her heart trembling. "Yes," she whispered. 2 different worlds, yet one path. For a long time they stood together in silence. But in that silence was more than words could hold. It was trust, respect, and something deeper beginning to bloom, a bond beyond species, a bond that no law or tradition could erase. The princess did not yet call it love, nor did Daniel, but in their hearts they both felt it. And though they did not speak it aloud, the galaxy would soon see that this bond was stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, and stronger even than the sickness that once tried to claim her life. The bond between the princess and the human grew stronger with every passing day. Whispers filled the palace, whispers that spread across the city. "She walks with him," some said. "She laughs with him," others added. It was not just gratitude anymore. Everyone could see it. Something deeper tied them together. The king grew restless. He had once welcomed the human sacrifice, but now he feared what it meant. "An alien princess cannot be bound to a human," he said in private. "It is not our way, it is not our law." But the queen shook her head gently. "Our daughter lives because of him. Can love not grow where life itself was returned?" The princess, however, was no longer silent. One morning she entered the great council hall, her steps firm, her head held high. The nobles bowed, surprised by her sudden strength. They thought she had come to speak about her recovery, but her voice carried a different fire. "My people," she began, her voice echoing across the chamber. "You know I was dying. You know I was beyond saving." A hush fell over the crowd. No one dared to interrupt. "And yet, I live," she continued. Not because of your science, not because of your power, but because of him. Because a human gave me part of himself. Gasps rose from the hall. Some nobles whispered in anger. Others looked down, ashamed. The king's jaw tightened, but the queen watched with tears in her eyes. The princess stepped forward, her voice louder now. I owe my life to him, and this is a debt I cannot repay with riches. I cannot repay it with titles or with gold. For he gave me more than all of that. He gave me hope. He gave me his heart. The words struck the council like thunder. The nobles shifted uncomfortably. A few shouted, "This is madness!" But the princess raised her hand, silencing them. You may call it madness, she said, but I call it truth. She turned, and in front of everyone she pointed to Daniel. He stood quietly at the edge of the hall, his clothes simple, his posture humble. He had not expected her to call his name. But when her eyes locked with his, he felt the weight of her words. This human is more than a stranger, more than a savior, she declared. He is part of me now, he gave me his body. And today, before you all, I give him my heart. The chamber exploded into shouts. Some voices cheered, others roared with, "Outrage, unthinkable," cried one noble. "She dishonors her bloodline," shouted another. But the princess did not flinch. Her gaze remained steady. Her words rang like steel against stone. The king rose from his throne, his voice booming. "Enough! Do you realize what you are saying?" The princess looked at him. Her father, the ruler of her people. "Yes," she answered firmly. "I know exactly what I am saying." The king's hands shook with rage. "Our laws forbid it. Our traditions forbid it. A princess cannot love a human." But the queen placed a hand on his arm. "Yet she does," she whispered. "And none of us can deny it." The people outside the hall soon learned of her words. The streets filled with voices. Some cried out in support. "She honors the human. Who saved her?" Others shouted in anger. "She breaks the old ways." The kingdom trembled, divided by love and tradition. Daniel himself was overwhelmed. He had never asked for her heart. He only wanted her to live. But now, as he stood before the council, he felt the truth of her words sink into him. She was no longer just the alien princess. She was a woman who had chosen him, and he could not deny that his own heart beat for her as well. Enemies across the stars heard the news. Some laughed, calling it weakness. Others grew afraid. For if a human and an alien princess could unite, what else could humans and aliens achieve together? Old barriers began to shake, and in the shadows of distant worlds, plans of betrayal began to form. But inside the palace, the princess stood tall. She faced her people without fear. She faced her father without regret. And she faced Daniel with nothing but truth. "I was beyond saving," she said softly. "But he saved me. Now I live not only because of him, but for him." The words were spoken, the bond was sealed, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The kingdom was no longer the same. The princess's declaration shook every tower, every street, every voice. Some called her brave, others called her foolish. But none could deny that history had changed. For the first time, an alien princess had given her heart to a human. The days that followed were filled with unrest. Crowds gathered outside the palace gates. Some carried banners of support, their voices rising in praise. "She honors the one who saved her," they cried. Others carried anger. "She breaks our laws, she betrays our blood," they shouted. The city trembled with division, but the princess walked among her people, her steps steady. She did not hide. She did not retreat. Her strength came from the human who walked beside her. Daniel had never asked for such attention. He was a simple man, untrained in politics, yet now he stood in the center of a storm. Nobles glared at him. Soldiers watched him. But when he looked at the princess, he saw only her. And when she looked at him, she saw life, hope, and a future she once believed lost. The king remained torn. His pride battled with his love for his daughter. Every night he sat in silence. Could he forbid her? Could he take away her happiness after she had already faced death? The queen's voice was gentle but firm. "Let her choose," she said. Her heart belongs to her, not to us." The king closed his eyes, knowing she was right. Meanwhile, the galaxy watched. Messages spread across worlds. A human had given his kidney. The princess had given her heart. Some saw it as weakness, others saw it as strength. Enemies whispered, "We must strike now before they unite." But allies whispered back, "Perhaps this is the dawn of something new." One night, the princess and Daniel stood again on the balcony. The stars stretched endlessly above them. "You have given me everything," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "No. You've given me more. I gave you a part of my body, but you gave me a reason. Before you, I was just another man in the crowd. Now I know why I was born. To meet you." Her chest ached with emotion. Tears welled in her eyes. She took his hand and pressed it to her heart. "Then hear this," she said, her voice trembling. "This heart, once broken, now beats for you, and as long as it beats, you will never be alone." Their bond was sealed not with ceremony, not with law, but with truth. A truth so powerful that even those who hated it could not destroy it. But peace did not come easily. Whispers of rebellion grew louder. A group of nobles plotted to end the human's life. "If he dies, the bond will die with him," they muttered. Yet word of their scheme reached the princess. And when she heard it, fury burned in her like fire. She stood before the council once again, her eyes blazing. "If anyone dares to harm him, they will answer to me," she declared, "and I will not forgive." Her words silenced the plots, for no one doubted her strength. She was not the weak, fading girl they once mourned. She was alive, strong, and unafraid, and standing. Beside her was the human who had made it possible. Soon her people began to change. Slowly, doubt turned to curiosity. Curiosity turned to respect, and respect began to turn into hope. They saw how she smiled again. They saw how she walked with pride. They saw that the human was not a weakness but a strength, and they began to whisper new words. Perhaps love is stronger than law. Perhaps hearts know no species. The galaxy too began to shift. Other worlds watched with wonder. If a human and an alien princess could stand together, what else could be possible? Trade agreements, peace talks, friendships once unthinkable, all sparked by one sacrifice and one love. In time, even the king bowed to the truth. He called Daniel into his chamber. For a long while, he said nothing. Then, finally, his stern face softened. "You saved my daughter," he said quietly. "You gave her life when even I could not. For that I cannot hate you. I may never fully understand you, but I will accept you." Daniel bowed his head respectfully. "I don't ask for a throne," he said. "I don't ask for power. I only ask for her hand, not as a prize but as a promise, that I will stand beside her until my last breath." The king studied him for a long time. At last he nodded. "You already gave her your life. How could I refuse your heart?" And so, the princess and the human stood together before their people, not as ruler and subject, not as alien and human, but as two souls united. Their bond became a symbol, a story whispered across stars, a story of sacrifice, of courage, of love. She had once been beyond saving, her life fading, her people preparing for her death. But a human gave her his kidney, and in return, she gave him her heart. Together, they proved that love was not bound by law, by blood, or by stars. It was stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, stronger than the galaxy itself.